She wasn't running. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't blocking anyone's path. She was walking to work. And he hit her anyway. Open-palmed. In broad daylight. On the steps of a federal building. In front of a security camera that never blinks. Her head snapped sideways. Her glasses hit the marble. One lens cracked clean across the middle. He didn't ask her name. He didn't check her bag. He didn't wait for an explanation. He looked at a composed, professional black woman who didn't move fast enough for his liking, and he made a decision that would detonate his entire career. She straightened her blazer. She picked up her glasses. She looked at him with eyes that held no fear, only something colder and far more permanent. Then she said 7 words. He laughed. He had 11 seconds of arrogance left before the world he thought he owned collapsed underneath him. Stay with me. Because this one doesn't just hit back. It obliterates. If you're ready for a story of silence, betrayal, hidden truth, and a moment that changes everything, then you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because Silent Voices brings you powerful stories where the unheard finally get their voice. Drop a fire in the comments if you believe justice always finds a way. Let's get into it. Washington, D.C. does not ease you into its mornings. It arrives hard and early, all concrete and ambition, the kind of city that was built to make ordinary people feel small and powerful people feel permanent. It was a Tuesday in late October. 7:42 in the morning. The air carried that particular autumn sharpness, cold enough to remind you it was serious, not cold enough yet to be cruel. The sky above the Dirksen Federal Building was a flat, pale gray, the kind that doesn't promise sun and doesn't threaten rain. It simply watches. She came around the corner of 2nd Street walking at the pace of someone with a 9 a.m. conference call, a 10 a.m. oral argument review, and approximately 0 patience for detours. Her name was Camille Okafor. She was 27 years old. She wore a charcoal blazer over a white shell. Her natural hair was pinned back at the crown. Her reading glasses, tortoiseshell frames, slightly too large for her face in a way that somehow looked intentional, were pushed to the top of her head. She carried a leather satchel over her left shoulder, thick and bowed at the seams from the weight of annotated briefs, margin notes running so deep into the pages that the ink bled through. She walked like someone who had always had somewhere important to be. The security guard at the building's side entrance, a former Secret Service agent named Marcus Thorne, a man not given to unnecessary gesture, looked up from his post and gave her a single nod. Not the nod of a guard acknowledging a visitor. The nod of a man acknowledging someone who outranked the building itself. She didn't stop at the checkpoint. She never did. Inside the satchel, between the briefs and a worn copy of a constitutional law text she had carried since law school, was a badge clipped to a leather credential wallet. The camera didn't linger on it. Neither did she. Somewhere across the city, a patrol unit was pulling out of the 4th District Station for a security sweep. Controlled access perimeter. Federal building corridor. Routine deployment. Officer Dale Mercer was driving. He was 38 years old. 11 years on the force. 3 commendations mounted in frames in his living room where other men kept family photographs. 4 complaints filed against him in 11 years. Physical contact, verbal intimidation, failure to de-escalate, all reviewed internally, all closed within 30 days, all buried under the signature of the same supervising sergeant. He had the particular energy of a man who had never once been told no by anyone with the authority to make it stick. His partner, Officer Pete Wills, sat in the passenger seat staring at the screen of the onboard laptop, entering the deployment code for the controlled access zone. He was 29. Quieter. The kind of quiet that comes not from having nothing to say but from having learned, slowly and uncomfortably, that saying it around Dale Mercer rarely ended well. The patrol unit turned onto 2nd Street. Camille Okafor came around the corner. Mercer saw her immediately. A woman in a blazer walking toward a restricted entrance without breaking stride. Without hesitation. Without asking permission from the officer standing 40 feet away whose entire posture said, "This block belongs to me this morning." He stepped into her path. She didn't slow down. And that single, quiet refusal to shrink, was the moment Officer Dale Mercer decided this woman needed to be taught something. Entrance is restricted. He said it the way men like Mercer say everything, not as information, but as a wall. Camille stopped 2 feet in front of him. She didn't step back. I have clearance for this entrance, she said. I use it every morning. Not this morning. She reached for the lapel of her blazer, slowly, the way you reach for something when you already know that the person watching you is looking for a reason. Her credential wallet was inside. Badge, federal seal, photograph. Everything that would have ended this in 4 seconds. Mercer's hand shot out and closed around her wrist. Not a grab to stop a threat. A grab to establish dominance. There is a difference, and every officer who has ever been properly trained knows exactly what that difference looks like. Slowly, he said. Pete Wills, standing 6 feet behind and to the right, shifted his weight. His jaw tightened. The word formed somewhere in his throat, Dale. It didn't make it to air. My name is Camille Okafor, she said. Her voice was even. Controlled. The voice of a woman who had argued in rooms where losing meant something real. I work in this building. If you'll allow me to produce my credentials. I don't need your credentials, ma'am. I need you to use the public entrance on the north side. I don't use the public entrance. You do today. She looked at him for a moment. Measuring. The way you measure a room before you decide how to fill it. Officer, she said carefully, I am going to reach inside my blazer and show you my identification. I am asking you to let go of my wrist so I can do that. He let go. She reached. He grabbed her again. Harder this time. The kind of hard that leaves a mark. The kind of hard that is a message dressed up as procedure. Behind them, Wills took a half step forward. Dale. The word was barely a sound. Mercer didn't hear it. Or he heard it and filed it under irrelevant. What happened next lasted less than 2 seconds. His right hand came up and across, open-palmed, fast, the motion of a man who had done something like this before and had never once answered for it. It connected with the left side of her face. The sound it made on a quiet October morning on a federal sidewalk was very small. That is the thing people never expect, how small the sound of that kind of violence is. How much damage can be contained in something so brief? Her head snapped sideways. The glasses, tortoiseshell, slightly too large, pushed to the top of her head, flew off and hit the marble step below the entrance. The left lens cracked diagonally, corner to corner, a clean break. She did not fall. She did not stumble. She absorbed the blow the way certain people absorb the worst things, by going very, very still. Above the entrance, 12 feet up and angled precisely at the sidewalk access point, a motion-triggered security camera blinked. It had been recording since the moment Mercer stepped into her path. 47 seconds of footage. Perfect frame. Unobstructed angle. Every detail visible. The grab, the second grab, the motion of his arm, the angle of impact, the crack of the lens, the stillness that followed. Mercer didn't look up at it. Camille straightened. Deliberately. Without rushing. She reached down and picked up her glasses. She looked at the cracked lens for exactly 1 second. Then she looked at Mercer. She didn't touch her face. She said, "You have no idea what you just did." He laughed. It was the laugh of a man who had heard variations of that line from the back of a patrol car before and had watched them evaporate at the station door. "I own this city, sweetheart," he said. He unclipped the handcuffs from his belt. He was still smiling. "And right now you're trespassing." He had no idea that the nameplate on the door 12 feet behind him read, "The Honorable Camille Okafor, Associate Justice, Supreme Court of the United States." He had no idea at all. The glass door behind Mercer opened. Not slowly. Not cautiously. It opened the way doors open when the person coming through them has already assessed the situation from behind the glass and arrived at a conclusion that requires speed. Marcus Thorne did not run for civilians. In 14 years of federal building security, 4 of them standing post outside briefing rooms at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, he had learned to move fast in a way that did not look like panic, because panic was contagious and professionalism was armor. He was moving fast now. He looked at the handcuffs in Mercer's hand. He looked at Camille, her stillness, the cracked glasses, the careful way she was holding her face arranged into an expression that gave nothing away. He looked at Mercer with an expression that could have stripped the paint off the patrol unit parked at the curb. "Officer." His voice was very quiet. The quieter Marcus Thorne spoke, people who knew him understood, the more serious the situation. "Do you know who this woman is?" Mercer didn't lower the cuffs. "A trespasser who refused a lawful order." Thorne looked at him for one full second. The kind of second that has weight. "She is an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States." He said each word at the same pace, with the same measured pressure, the way you read a charge aloud in a courtroom. "The badge she was reaching for is a federal judicial credential. This entrance is her designated judicial access point. She has used it every working day for 2 years. The handcuffs did not move. But Mercer's hand, the hand holding them, went very still. "That badge you grabbed her wrist trying to stop her from showing you," Thorne continued, "would have told you everything you needed to know in 4 seconds. Behind Mercer, Pete Wills was already on his radio. His voice was not loud. It was the voice of a man trying to do the right thing 6 minutes too late, because doing it 6 minutes earlier would have required a kind of courage he hadn't found in time. Camille had not spoken since the 7 words. She stood on the step where it had happened, glasses in one hand, cracked lens catching the flat October light, and watched Mercer's face cycle through the mathematics of what he had just done. Thorne pointed upward. 12 feet. The camera. "Motion triggered," he said. 12 frames per second. "It began recording the moment you stepped into her path." He paused. "The footage uploads automatically to the Federal Building Security Archive, which routes, in real time, to the Department of Justice Security Monitoring System." Mercer looked up at the lens. The lens looked back. "They already have it," Thorne said. Mercer took 1 step backward. Then another. His hand went to his radio. His thumb hovered over the transmit button. He didn't press it, because he did not know what to say. He had assaulted a sitting member of the highest court in the country on the steps of a federal building in front of a camera that had already sent the evidence to people who did not work for his precinct, did not answer to his sergeant, and had absolutely no reason to help him. The smile was gone. It had been gone for a while now. He just hadn't noticed until this moment. The Department of Justice does not move slowly when a federal judge is involved. At 8:04 a.m., 22 minutes after the incident, an automated security flag arrived at the DOJ Office of Professional Responsibility. The flag carried 4 attachments: a timestamp, a geotagged location marker, a badge number pulled from the Controlled Access Zone deployment log Mercer had signed at 6:53 a.m., and 47 seconds of high-definition footage from the Federal Building Security Archive. The duty officer who received it opened it, watched it once, and immediately escalated it 2 tiers above his pay grade. It landed on the desk of Deputy Attorney General Sandra Reeves at 8:11 a.m. She was still holding her coffee when she pressed play. She watched it once. She set the coffee down and did not pick it up again. She made 2 phone calls. The first was to her deputy. The second was to a private number she had used fewer than a dozen times in her career. Chief Justice Harold Brennan answered on the second ring. He was 71 years old. He had spent 4 decades building a court that operated above the turbulence of the political moment, a thing that became harder every year and required more work than the public ever saw. He listened without interrupting while Reeves described what the footage contained. When she finished, there was a silence that lasted 4 seconds. "Is she hurt?" he said. Reeves told him what she knew. "Get me the officer's complete service record," Brennan said. "And get me the Metropolitan Police Chief. In that order." Across the city, in the 4th District Precinct, Mercer was sitting at his desk writing his incident report. He described Camille as an uncooperative civilian who refused to identify herself and became physically aggressive toward an officer in a controlled access zone. He described the strike as a defensive contact necessary to establish perimeter control and prevent the subject from accessing a restricted area. He did not use the word slap. He did not use the word judge. He did not use the word credential. He saved the report at 8:19 a.m. and leaned back in his chair. "She should have moved when I told her to," he said, to no one in particular. In the room 2 doors down, Pete Wills was sitting across from the union representative he had called, then told to wait, then called again. He had the look of a man running 2 conversations simultaneously, the one in the room and the one inside his own head, where the version of himself who had said Dale loudly enough was living an entirely different Tuesday morning. He had already decided he was not signing anything that matched Mercer's report. Sergeant Dana Fuentes of Internal Affairs received her assignment at 8:26 a.m. She pulled Mercer's file before she pulled on her jacket. She read the 4 complaints in sequence. She noted the name of the supervising sergeant who had closed each one within 30 days. She noted that the supervising sergeant and Mercer had attended the same academy class, graduated the same year, and were photographed together at 3 departmental events in the past decade. She put the file in her bag, picked up her keys, and said nothing to anyone on her way out. The precinct building was quiet when she left it. It would not be quiet for long. The footage published at 6:03 p.m. It was not leaked by the DOJ. It was not released by the court. It arrived through a Freedom of Information request filed 3 weeks earlier by a legal journalist named Priya Mehta, who had been tracking federal building access logs as part of an entirely unrelated investigation into contractor irregularities. The request had been pending. The security flag that morning had triggered an automatic public records classification review. The footage, as a record of an incident on federal property involving a federal official, met the threshold for mandatory disclosure. The title of the clip, as Mehta posted it at 6:03 p.m., Metro Officer Strikes Federal Judge on Her Own Courthouse Steps, Full Footage. By 7 p.m., 8 million views. By 9 p.m., 11. By midnight, the number had climbed past anything the platform's trending algorithm had been calibrated to handle gracefully, and it simply pinned the clip to the top of every feed and left it there. There was no ambiguity in the footage. That was what people kept saying, in comments and on broadcasts, and in the text messages lighting up the phones of every police commissioner and city council member in the district. There was simply no frame in those 47 seconds that could be interpreted another way. Mercer's phone died from notifications at 7:34 p.m. He plugged it in. It began buzzing before the charging screen had finished loading. He silenced it. His wife called from her sister's house. She had already seen the clip twice before he thought to warn her it existed. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She said, "Dale, I have a daughter." She hung up. His union representative called at 7:51. "Do not speak to anyone. Do not post anything. Do not open your door." His lawyer called at 8:02. "Do not speak to your union representative without me present." His mother called at 8:17. He looked at her name on the screen for a long time. He did not answer. Outside his house, a neighbor's porch light clicked on. A Ring camera, motion-triggered, the same kind of passive, indifferent witness that had been his undoing that morning, recorded him standing at his living room window staring at the street. He looked like a man who had not yet fully understood that the world he believed he owned had already been rezoned. Across the city, Camille Okafor issued a statement through the Supreme Court's Public Affairs Office at 9 p.m. It was 61 words. It contained no emotional language. It stated the facts of the incident in 2 sentences. It named no one. It ended, "I trust that the appropriate institutions will respond to this matter with the seriousness it demands." She gave no interviews. She did not appear on camera. The following morning, she arrived at the Dirksen Federal Building at 7:44 a.m. 2 minutes later than usual. Charcoal blazer. New glasses, same frame, same style, because she had liked the old ones. Satchel over her left shoulder, bowed at the seams. She walked through the same entrance. Marcus Thorne held the door. A wire photographer from the Associated Press, stationed outside the building on a different assignment entirely, caught the shot on instinct. That photograph, and the photograph of Mercer walking to his car in sweatpants at 10 a.m. after his suspension was confirmed, ran side by side on the front pages of 4 national newspapers the following morning. The caption beneath Camille's photograph read, "She came back." No further explanation was offered. None was needed. Sergeant Dana Fuentes had seen 4 complaints dismissed without consequence. She had spent 2 days reading them before she said a single word in the official record. She wanted to understand not just what had happened on that October sidewalk, but how 11 years of a career had been allowed to arrive there. What she found was not complicated. It was just quiet. The first complaint had been filed 18 months into Mercer's tenure. A woman, 34, described being grabbed by the wrist during a routine traffic stop after she reached for her registration without being told to wait. The complaint was reviewed. The supervising sergeant noted that the officer had acted within the parameters of defensive contact protocol during an ambiguous stop. Closed. The second complaint came 2 years later. A 17-year-old described being shoved against a wall outside a convenience store while being questioned about a shoplifting incident he was not ultimately charged with. Reviewed. Closed. The third. The fourth. Different people. Different neighborhoods. Same hands. Same outcome. 30 days. Same signature. The supervising sergeant and Officer Dale Mercer had graduated the same academy class. They had been photographed together at 3 departmental commendation ceremonies. They had shared a patrol unit for the first 2 years of Mercer's career. Fuentes presented her findings on a Thursday morning to a room that included the Internal Affairs Director, 2 DOJ attorneys, and the Metropolitan Police Chief, who sat with his hands flat on the table and his eyes on the middle distance, and did not say a single word that was not a direct response to a direct question. The Department of Justice filed federal charges under Title 18, Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law, the following Tuesday. Because the incident had occurred on federal property and had involved the direct obstruction of a federal officer's access to a federal building, the charge was elevated to a federal civil rights felony. The filing was 34 pages. The footage was Exhibit A. It appeared on page 1. Mercer was arrested at his home at 6:04 a.m. on a Thursday. He answered the door in a gray t-shirt. 2 federal marshals stood on the step. He looked at their jackets. He looked at the street behind them. Then he turned around and put his hands behind his back without being asked, the first procedurally correct thing he had done in this entire situation. His neighbor's Ring camera was running. It always was. The hearing lasted 3 days. Mercer's attorney argued the contact was consistent with defensive perimeter control protocol. On the first day, the judge asked him to define perimeter control in the context of a credentialed federal official attempting to access her own building. The attorney said the officer had not verified the credential at the time of contact. The judge asked why the officer had prevented the verification. The attorney moved on. On the second day, the DOJ played the footage. The judge watched it in its entirety. When it finished, she looked at Mercer's attorney over her reading glasses with an expression that collapsed the distance between polite and done. The outcome, a federal conviction. 4 years in a federal corrections facility. Permanent revocation of law enforcement certification in all 50 states, a consequence that meant no badge, no gun, no jurisdiction, nowhere, forever. A civil rights compliance order attached to his name in the Federal Registry. He would never carry a badge again. The supervising sergeant who had signed the 4 closed complaints was referred for a formal departmental review. 2 of the original complainants, notified by Fuentes' office, filed civil suits within 60 days. Both settled. The Metropolitan Police Department announced a structural overhaul of its internal complaint review process, independent oversight, mandatory external review for any use of force complaint, no more same-unit internal closure authority. Pete Wills was not charged. He cooperated fully, submitted a voluntary written account that corroborated the footage in every particular, and was reassigned to a desk role pending evaluation. He enrolled in a departmental ethics program on his own initiative, without being asked. Whether that meant anything in the long run, the story did not yet know. But it noted it. The small choices matter too, even when they arrive late. Camille Okafor did not testify at the criminal trial. She didn't need to. The camera had already said everything she would have said, and it had said it without ever raising its voice. 6 months later. Same sidewalk. Same morning light. That particular flat October gray had given way to a pale spring blue, the kind of sky that doesn't make promises but keeps the ones it makes. Justice Camille Okafor came around the corner of 2nd Street at 7:42 a.m. Charcoal blazer. Leather satchel bowed at the seams. Glasses she had stopped replacing after the second pair and simply had repaired, the cracked lens receded in the original frame, because she had decided she wanted to keep them. Marcus Thorne nodded from behind the glass. The door opened before she reached it. She walked through. She did not pause at the step. She did not look at the marble where the lens had cracked. She did not break her stride. Above the entrance, the security camera blinked green. The building had always known who she was. Justice arrived. But here is the thing that stays with me, that should stay with you. 4 people filed complaints before Camille Okafor. 4 people described the same hands, the same pattern, the same man. And every single one of those complaints was closed in 30 days by someone who knew him. Those 4 people did not have a nameplate on a federal door. So I need you to sit with this question, and I want your honest answer in the comments. Would any of this have happened if she were anyone else? If this story moved you, hit the like button. Subscribe and ring the bell, because the next story is already waiting. And trust me when I tell you, it hits just as hard.